In modern cancer research, we're dealing with a really interesting problem. We have more patient data than ever before. I mean, a literal mountain of it. But the biggest challenge, the thing that keeps researchers scratching their heads, is how do you make sense of it all when it's all stored in different places, in totally different formats? And that's the key question, isn't it? Right now, doctors and scientists are basically trying to solve this incredibly complex puzzle. But the pieces, you've got a doctor's note over here, a lab result there, an MRI scan somewhere else, they just weren't made to fit together. So how do you possibly get the full picture? See, the problem is that each of these critical data points lives in its own little world, its own silo. The story told in a clinical note is written in plain language. That's completely different from the visual data you get from a pathology slide, and that, in turn, is a world away from the raw numbers in a genetic profile. This separation makes getting a single, clear view of a patient's cancer journey, well, almost impossible. All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we're going to unpack this big data puzzle in cancer. Then we'll meet HONeYBEE, a new AI framework that's built to solve it. We'll see how it was put through its paces, dig into the really surprising things it found, and finally, we'll talk about what this all means for the future of AI in cancer care. So let's dive right into the problem. It's not about not having enough data. It's about not being able to connect the dots. Just having more information hasn't automatically given us more clarity. This whole silo problem has been a major roadblock. Think about it. Really important clues about a patient's prognosis or how they might respond to treatment are literally trapped inside these different file types. And because they're trapped, we can't combine their power to make the best possible predictions. But what if you could just smash down those walls? That's where this new framework comes in. It's designed to do exactly that, to unify all this data and create something way more powerful, a single digital fingerprint for every single patient. So let's meet HONeYBEE. It's an open source tool built to do one thing and do it really, really well. Take all those different kinds of medical data and blend them together into one single profile that an AI can actually understand. Now, HONeYBEE does this by creating something called embeddings. And the best way to think of an embedding is exactly like a digital fingerprint. It's this compact but super rich summary of all of a patient's data. An AI creates it by pulling out the most important patterns from all those different sources and then rolling them into one unified profile. The process itself is actually pretty simple in concept. First, you collect all the different data. Then HONeYBEE uses these powerful AI models to create those digital fingerprints for each data type. Next, and this is the magic step, it fuses those individual fingerprints into one. And once you have that, you can use it to answer some really critical questions. So, the idea sounds great, right? But the real question is, does it actually work in the real world? Well, to find out, researchers put HONeYBEE through a huge, demanding test. And when I say massive, I am not kidding. They used data from the Cancer Genome Atlas, which involved analyzing information from over 11,000 patients across 33 different types of cancer. So yeah, this wasn't some small lab experiment. This was designed to handle the messy, complex scale of real-world data. They basically graded it on 4 key challenges. First, could it correctly identify the type of cancer? Second, could it find other similar patients in this huge database? Third, could it actually predict a patient's survival outlook? And finally, could it automatically group similar cancers together just based on their digital fingerprints? Okay, now this is where the story gets really, really cool. Because what they found wasn't just good, it was genuinely surprising. The results kind of turned some common assumptions on their head. So this leads us to the big question. You have all these different kinds of data, the doctor's notes, the pathology images, the scans, the molecular data. Which one, all by itself, turned out to be the best predictor? The answer was just stunning. Check this out. The embeddings from the clinical data, just the written notes from doctors, achieved an incredible 98.5% accuracy in identifying the cancer type. That absolutely blew the other data types out of the water, especially the whole slide images from the microscope slides. And this table just drives that point home. Yeah, okay, technically fusing all the data together was the most accurate, but only by a tiny fraction. The clinical data, all on its own, was ridiculously powerful, outperforming every other single data type by a huge margin. So here it is, the biggest surprise of the whole study. In this big, clean data set, the story put together by a human expert, the clinical notes, often had a stronger, clearer signal than any of the raw data from machines. The human-curated story was king. And if that wasn't enough of a twist, get this. When they tested which AI was best at understanding those powerful notes, it wasn't the specialized AI trained only on medical text. Nope. The winner was a general-purpose AI trained on all sorts of text from the internet. It achieved near-perfect accuracy. Sometimes a broader education just wins. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Not all the data was that easy for the AI to figure out. The pathology reports, with all their complex and inconsistent language, they were a real headache. The first results were, well, not so great. At first, using that specialized Gatortron model, the accuracy based only on pathology reports was just 78.4%. I mean, that's not bad, but there's definitely a lot of room for improvement there. But then, the researchers tried a simple little tweak. They did what's called fine-tuning on the model for this specific task, and boom, the accuracy jumped to over 91%. That's a massive leap of over 12 points, which just goes to show you that even really tricky data can give up its secrets if you know how to ask. Okay, so let's zoom out and look at the big picture here. What does all of this really mean for patients, for the future of cancer research? Why does a framework like HONeYBEE actually matter? You see, while the clinical notes were the star of the show in this study, you have to remember that data came from a highly organized research database. The real world is a lot messier. As the researchers themselves point out, notes in a busy hospital can be incomplete or inconsistent. And that is where the original idea behind HONeYBEE becomes so important, because when that king piece of data is flawed or missing, you need an AI that can pull clues from everywhere else, the images, the labs, the genomics, and fuse them together to still see the whole story. And all this work leaves us with a really powerful forward-looking question. What if we are building towards a future where an AI can look at a patient's messy, scattered, real-world data and, in an instant, just get it? Understand their entire cancer journey? That's the dream. A framework like HONeYBEE isn't just a neat experiment. It's a fundamental building block for creating the smart, adaptable AI we're going to need to make that future a reality.